morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. And joining me, as always, on Tuesday morning is Edwin Eisendrath. He hosts a show for us called It's the Democracy Stupid, and that's on Friday afternoons right here on Lincoln Square. That is also the name of his Substack and his radio show in Chicago that you can listen to over the weekend. Edwin, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Susan. Nice to see you.
Well, I thought we'd start out with the very unfortunate passing of a Chicago icon, Jesse Jackson, founder of the Rainbow Coalition, ran for president in 1984, and has been just a leading civil rights icon and a son of Chicago. So wondering if you have any personal reflections of someone who had such an impact in your hometown.
Yeah, and in my life. When I was a little boy, my dad said to me, hey, there's this young preacher who is making a name for himself, doing some remarkable things. At the time, it was called Operation Breadbasket in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And he took me down to hear him preach for the first time. That was my first experience with the Black church. You know, it just wasn't in my life as a little boy. And I went, and it was fascinating, and he was stunning. And I got to know him really well in Chicago, both as an alderman, but, you know, I ran the public housing in Chicago. And so I would see not the Jesse that people see on TV all the time, because, you know, he's very misunderstood. I mean, he's a complicated man, but he would go every week and speak to communities where there were no cameras, no press, you know, and he would say, you are somebody, and we can help, you know, you can help get your life moving in the right direction. And Christmas morning, every year, he would bring his whole church to Cook County Jail for, you know, the music and everything. And I would go to Cook County Jail with my kids, you know, to hear him talk to the people there and say, why are you here? You know, you picked up the gun, you picked up the drugs, you're better than this. And really help people when there were, no cameras, nobody paying attention. The man loved his people and really tried to lift everybody up. He dedicated his life to civil rights, but when we say it, it's coded as Black rights, and that's not what he did. He was about making every American somebody. He had great courage. He was unbelievably charismatic when he was preaching, you know. And one of my all-time favorite things he did, and for those of you who like Dr. Seuss, go on YouTube and look up Jesse reading The Cat in the Hat. It was just he just had a sense of humor. You know, I remember one time we were doing something with public housing, and I went to him and said, I need your help with this. And it had to do with changing something that was right 20 years before, but no longer fitting. He looked at me and said, didn't I march for that? And I said, yes, you did. But times have changed. He said, yeah, they sure have. I'll help you. You know, he wasn't stuck. He was very much attentive to the times as they changed. And he was very much a reason they changed. So he is a huge loss, personally for his family, for this city, but for everybody.
I was privileged enough to interview him once, and it was in Chicago. I was covering one of the debates for the 2008 Democratic nomination for president. This one was held in the fall of 2007 at Soldier Field. And in the spin room afterwards, it's you know, for anyone who hasn't been there, that's when you go there and either candidates or their representatives or, you know, other people in politics go there. They'll talk with the press, make their case, talk about what they think is important. And I'm not going to necessarily name names of some of the candidates who were in there that weren't the friendliest, but Jesse Jackson was there not advocating for any particular candidate, just as a son of Chicago, and, you know, to talk about the issues he thought was important. And he was incredibly generous with his time. When you talked with him, you felt like you were the only one in the room. It was just, it was a really surreal moment for me, having grown up in Chicago, to be face to face with someone that had been part of my life on television for so long. And yet he was talking to me just like I'm sure he did with thousands and thousands of other people, just, willing to give of his time and really showed just the human side of him that was a privilege to see.
Yeah. And he was very effective. I mean, there would be no President Obama if it weren't for Jesse's runs for president. I mean, you think of the era, his impact was post Civil Rights Act. So some of it was about voting rights, but a lot of it was about how do we create a society where everybody gets to fully participate. And he understood before a lot of people did that, working class is multicolored, and and labor unions and civil rights leaders should work together. And if they do, we end up with a better country. And we're a better nation for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we've had some news on the media front in the last couple of days, starting with the fact that, they're both about CBS, actually. We have Anderson Cooper, who used to be associated with 60 Minutes, decided that's just not something I need to deal with Bari Weiss and what she's doing to CBS News. And then more censorship with Stephen Colbert, who had an interview with one of the candidates for U.S. Senate, a Democrat, James Tallarico, but was told by his superiors at CBS News or CBS lawyers, that he couldn't air the interview because the FCC had complained that this was somehow violating equal time, even though having politicians on is a standard of late night television, and you just do your standard disclaimer. They're running against X, Y, and Z. We invite them to come on. This has been a staple for years. I seem to remember Donald Trump, for instance, hosting Saturday Night Live when he was running for president, and everyone seemed okay with that. But we have a clip of that, and Steve Colbert, I have to admire how he has continued to stand up to his own network and kind of dare them to fire him at this point.
Who is not one of my guests tonight? That's Texas State Representative James Tallarico. He was supposed to be here, but we were told in no uncertain terms by our network's lawyers, who called us directly, that we could not have him on the broadcast. Then I was told in some uncertain terms that not only could I not have him on, I could not mention me not having him on. And because my network clearly doesn't want us to talk about this, let's talk about this. This doesn't just affect interviews. The rules forbid any candidate appearance, including by voice or picture. That's right. I am absolutely not allowed to show a photo of Texas State Representative James Tallarico. And because that's not him. That's a stock photo we found when we Googled "not James Tallarico." A couple of weeks ago, on Carr's orders, the FCC opened an investigation into ABC's The View after their James Tallarico interview. That is absolutely shocking. James Tallarico did The View before my show? At 2 whoopee? So I cannot show you any form of James Tallarico. I can't interview James Tallarico. I can't show any pictures of James Tallarico. I'm not even sure I can say the words James Tallarico. But what I can show you is what we always show when we have to pull material at the last minute. This tasteful nude of Brendan Carr.
So he's funny. It's a serious topic.
Absolutely, but very well played. We know Stephen Colbert is already out at CBS. That announcement came earlier last year. Since then, we've had controversies where Jimmy Kimmel was pulled off the air of ABC. We've seen this constant interference and by the FCC and direct orders from the president who's saying, get this person off the air, get that one. This person displeases me. So, Edwin, where are we at with the state of media in America right now?
One more fact before we talk about what it all means. Brendan Carr says, yeah, I think I'm going to get rid of the fairness exemption for late night TV, but I won't get rid of it for talk radio. Right?
Which is very dominated by the right.
That's absolutely right. So we know this is all partisan stuff, and the context for it, it goes to the core of who this administration is and who they want it to be, and it should terrify everyone. Right? Yesterday? Marco Rubio was in Hungary,
right,
trying to prop up Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban is responsible for more erosion of the press than almost any leader, maybe outside of Putin. Right. I mean, he has completely, there wasn't a free press in Russia to be destroyed. There was one in Hungary, and he destroyed it. They think they own the truth. And I want to pair it with the remarkable ruling that came out this week on the administration's attempt to take away the placards that talked about the slaves that were held in the president's house in Philadelphia.
Yes.
The people that George Washington had who were slaves who lived in his house. And Donald Trump says, that's not the history I want people to see. That's not, and got rid of it. The judge said, I get it. For you in this administration, you do not believe there's any truth. There's only message. And you get to decide what the message is. But you know what? That's not how history works. Things happened. Scholars figure it out. There is truth. Truth is not just what you say, Donald Trump, but that's who they believe they are. They believe they can tell you what to believe. They can tell you what happened yesterday. If they told you that yesterday you had a roast pig for breakfast, well, damn, you had a roast pig for breakfast. And if you disagree with that, you know what? They'll come after you. They'll sue you. And this is who they are. And it affects everything. It's the reason why they can lie about Renee Good and Alex Preddy. It's absolutely the most dishonest to its core administration. And maybe that's why they wrap their arms around God, thinking that'll somehow put some patina of some divine truth on them, but it doesn't. It just says they've made religion a political thing and cheapened it like they do everything else. So where are we with the media? Well, corporate media has failed. CBS should have told Brendan Carr to go jump in the frozen Lake Michigan here, but they didn't. Instead, they called up Colbert and said, cancel this. Thank goodness you and I and tens of thousands of others in independent media have stepped up into this breach. But Hungary has gone after the independent media too, and they have found ways to do that. And that's what they want it all silenced. That's why they went after Don Lemon. They went after Don Lemon because they want everybody like you and me to know you don't have some big corporation protecting you from their lawsuits. So it is a full-on attempt to control what we understand truth to be, and for us to understand truth to be only what their message is. Yeah. And it is absolutely the core of totalitarian thinking. Everybody who's ever written about this, and that, from George Orwell to Hannah Arendt to you and me, we all know what this is. Right. And I think Americans increasingly know what this is. This attempt to censor Colbert failed phenomenally. He put the interview then on YouTube where it couldn't, where it's still allowed. And it was seen by like 100, I don't know, some huge number in the first, couple hours. And it's going to be today. It's going to be everywhere. So Americans aren't interested in being censored. Americans aren't interested in being told, you will think what we want you to think, any more than we're interested in being told, move off this street because we are pointing guns at you. That's just, we're not going to do it. So the administration to finish, desperate to be in control of everything, including thought, is finding that Americans don't give a damn what they're desperate to do. We're going to push back. And they'll try and cheat in the elections. They won't succeed because we won't let them. And finally, we'll be rid of these monsters. But they are monsters from top to bottom. And like you and I were going to just talk about their cabinet of monsters, but they're all monsters.
Yeah, absolutely. Edwin, as disturbed as I am about how corporate media has folded time and time again to this administration, and I am, I have to say, I feel like this latest tingle with Colbert really does illustrate how they are losing the war. They may be winning battles, but they are losing the war because, first of all, you do have independent media like what we do here at Lincoln Square, what you do on your Substack. It's the Democracy Stupid. And, if you're new here and you don't subscribe to either of us, please do. We're here for you. We're not bought and sold by corporate media. We don't have billionaires telling us what to do. This is where you can go for real facts without, fear or favor. But beyond that, you saw the ridiculous reaction from MAGA and the Trump administration to Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl halftime show. Something that was, by anyone who actually enjoys their life, enjoyed that, whether you're a fan of his music or not. It was
I never heard his music before because that's not what I do. It's not my thing, but I loved it. It was so full of love. It was such a warm and loving tribute to, to marriage, to people who were working hard for a living, to his island. I mean, it was all positive.
Absolutely.
And not political.
And the fact that people in the Trump administration think that they can tell Americans what they should like, what they should watch, what entertainment should be. I feel like that is one of the key ways that this whole MAGA experiment is going to fail, because one of Donald Trump's appeals was, hey, I shouldn't be president. I'm a reality TV star. I'm a little bit, outside of the traditional, norm, and people can't tell you what to do. That's why I'm going to have an MMA fight at the White House. I'm something different. And that held some appeal for a limited amount of time with some people. But now that he's like, I will tell you what's funny. I'm going to tell you what to watch. I'm going to tell you what you can't watch. That goes to the heart of what we are as Americans. And I think that it really goes against what a lot of people on the right want. I mean, they've been telling us for years that, you can't tell me what to do. I can say what I'm going to say. I shouldn't be canceled.
Yeah.
You should have the White House canceling comedians. That's what we want.
Nobody wants it. I mean, and he wants to be the boss of the bosses. And when corporate media, when all these big, powerful people do what he tells them to be part of it, that's going to lead the rest of us to say, okay, we get it. There's all of us. And then there's the Davos Epstein crowd that you're part of, Donald. You pretended you weren't, but you made your choice. You could have chosen to work for Americans. You decided you wanted your gold ballroom. You wanted to be richer than all of them. You wanted to be part of them. You're in those documents a million times. You're hiding that. It's the Epstein Davos crowd trying to rule over the rest of us. And we're not going to have it. And they just should be really, I want to say to corporate America, there's a reaction coming and it's huge. It's huge. And if you don't want to be swept away, you better pick a better side. Now, don't wait until, to try and rewrite the history after Donald Trump loses and say, oh, I didn't know. We were just following orders. We didn't know. Nobody's going to believe it. And America's going to have huge retribution. So pick the better side. Do it now while you have a chance.
Absolutely. Well, as you talked about, what we were going to get to, and we still will, is, the Epstein administration, Trump's cabinet, because they did have a hell of a week last week, and it's running into this week with Marco Rubio meeting with Viktor Orban, as you pointed out. But Stephen Dennis, who's a longtime Capitol Hill reporter, had a tweet that I felt really encapsulated what we got last week, and I think we have that right.
Yep.
So, we got RFK Jr. bragging about snorting cocaine off a toilet seat. We've got Noem's blankie problems on her private plane. I mean, there was a lot that happened last week, and I felt like it really illustrated the fact that, you wrote for us and for your own Substack several months ago a great piece about how there is absolutely no one that you can admire in this administration, no one that you would want your children to grow up and be. And I feel like this is really the Mean Girls administration. I mean, last week we had Pam Bondi testify before Congress, screaming about the Dow hitting 50,000 with a burn book, a literal burn book next to her on opposition research against her inquisitors. We had Hegseth tweeting through the fact that he has been losing in court with his attempt to prosecute Mark Kelly for just saying, hey, by the way, if you get an illegal order, you don't have to follow it. But it's this pettiness that he has. And then, of course, you've got RFK Jr., who's just like the weirdo of the group, who's literally, do we have the clip of him bragging about doing coke off a toilet seat? I mean, this is let's just stress, this guy is in charge of our healthcare system. I mean, if you support Medicare for all, which is a fine position, think about what it would be if he was running it. This is the guy. It's
and
nuts.
I said, I'm not scared of a germ. I used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats. And I know this disease will kill me.
Right.
Like if I don't.
I mean, listen to this guy speak. Does he come off as someone that you want in charge of your healthcare? I mean, he looks awful.
Well, it obviously affected him. I mean, he's nuts, and measles is back. It's killing people again. The outbreaks are everywhere now. And it isn't just measles. I mean, my gosh, this is the worst. I can't even talk about it. It's so dangerous and so bad. And the damage being done to our country by this administration and this clown. And I want to back up. I don't want to be partisan about this, because there have been people in every administration, Republican administrations as well as Democratic administrations, that I admire, that I think are true, wonderful public servants. This is the exception. This isn't Democrat versus Republican. This is, the whole country should be appalled. Kristi Noem has, I don't know. I thought she had 2 private jets. Now she's got this giant one with multiple bidets and a wet bar. And she's firing a pilot because he didn't move her blanket from one plane to another. But, oh, wait, I have to rehire him because I don't have anybody who can fly me back. I mean, this is insane, right? And now today, Susan, we learned that right after she got there, the Coast Guard had lost a man overboard, and they were in a search mission. And she called off the planes that were in the search mission because she wanted to use them to deport people. So forget the sailor in the water, and the sailor in the water was never recovered. I mean, I don't know if it's because she did call off the planes, but she clearly didn't care, right? I mean, these are terrible, appalling people. I mean, they're the worst of the worst.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of sociopaths, and I understand that there can be some semi-amusing moments, about their antics. I mean, her freaking out about a blanket being left on the plane. But I mean, even that story, think about the fact that there's a body count for that story. That's nuts. And I cannot think, I mean, I cannot think of any other administration where you would see antics like this. I mean, there have been very bad mistakes made in other administrations. I mean, under George W. Bush, we went to war under false pretenses. Those are serious issues. But this level of incompetence and the violence that they have wreaked against ordinary people, I mean, and they've only been in power for a little over a year. That's the scary part.
We have to win, and we have to win big this year and take back Congress, and make Congress work again. We need it. I don't. If the Republicans retain control and continue to be this fascist party that they are, we had a nice 250-year run, and it'll be over. And lots of people will be in those prison camps they're building all over the country. You know, but I don't think we're going to get there. I do think we will win because Americans hate this stuff. And, you know, we have a long tradition that they don't have in Hungary of democracy and an enormous heritage. Freedom is in our DNA. You know, that's why we're so creative. That's why, I mean, you look around the world, so much of the world's culture, that doesn't mean there's a great culture and great stuff coming from the rest of the world, but we are so productive culturally because of our freedoms, you know, and they would squash it all. Right. And I don't believe Americans are going to let them. I think people have caught on. I mean, you hear Joe Rogan complaining about these guys.
Alex Jones was even complaining.
Yeah,
and he's
not people that you and I love. Right. But welcome to the fight while you're in it, boys. You know,
I guess, you know, I mean, but there have been a lot of those bro podcasters, Andrew Schultz, etc. They seem to be having buyer's remorse.
Young people who supported them are done with them. Yeah. I mean, the Latino voters that voted for him are
young voters.
Disgusted. Yeah. So. I mean, and I can't believe he'll get 4 black votes and the most racist president we've ever had. I just think, like Susan, you can hear, I can't even say it. His vision of America, where it is just all white people who just believe what he says, is the dumbest, ugliest vision for a nation you can ever imagine. I mean, what a dull, ugly place. You know, who wants to be that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that really Trump's vision for this country is basically everyone who doesn't love him should be in jail. And that would be the vast majority of this country at this point. And I think that's
prison camps for us.
Right.
And he wants to take, and when you go to jail, we'll just take what's in your bank account and put it in mine. And let me just say again, we took another one of these ships at sea with oil in it because it's somehow sanctioned oil. Okay, maybe. But then we sell the oil on the market and the money doesn't come here. It goes into an offshore account in Qatar that Donald Trump controls.
Right.
And somehow this idea that we're using American military assets to steal oil, take oil, whatever, sell it, and then use the profits for Donald Trump is so appalling that, I mean, alone, he should be impeached and thrown out for that. I mean, every day you can pick your thing, but it's just criminal. I mean, we're paying our military to steal stuff that enriches him personally. That should make every American just sick. Sick.
Look at the hundreds of millions of dollars that the people of Minneapolis are on the hook for because of an occupying military force with ICE and Border Patrol agents just wantonly, destroying property and taking people off the street. And Tom Homan, who didn't make that list, but is every bit as evil, was saying the people of Minneapolis should thank us because we made you safer, even though they are responsible for 2 of the 3 murders in Minneapolis this year. Yeah.
I'm thankful for them because they radicalized a good chunk of the country. Because everybody who saw that, everybody, whether they live in Texas, or Western Pennsylvania, they or Ohio, they looked at that and they said, that is just not who we're supposed to be. Right? So people in Minneapolis, like the people of Chicago before them, like people in LA, stood up, and Americans said, whose side are we on? Are we on the side of these guys in their fatigues pointing the guns at ordinary citizens? Or are we on the side of the guy who bent down to help someone and got murdered by them? Or the woman who said, I'm not angry with you, dude, and then they shot her in the face. You know what? We know what side we're on, and it isn't the president's. And that's not just you. Again, that's all over the country. And like fascists everywhere, they brought their own camera crews to document their atrocities. They thought it was a good idea to show everybody how tough they were. You know what? It's going to end up putting a lot of them in jail at some point, in jail for murder, among other things. And it's also great. Like, show those videos, because the rest of us are disgusted, just disgusted by it.
Yeah. And I think we should say that the people who have gone along with this, like Dr. Phil is part of one of their film crews. They should not be let off the hook either. Palantir, that is profiting, and all of these companies by building these warehouses for people who oftentimes have done nothing wrong. They're US citizens, or they overstayed a visa and they're being locked away. They've thrown away the key. There are diseases that are running rampant in these facilities. There needs to be a reckoning for everyone who has gone along with this administration and profited off of it. And that is not a short list.
It's a huge list, which is why, again, my message to corporate America is, do not underestimate the rage in America that this man has unleashed. Do not underestimate our desire for justice. Switch sides while you can.
Yeah.
Switch sides while you can.
There will be a different Justice Department at some point, and some of the smarter people in corporate America are starting to figure that out.
Yep.
And
there
perhaps
will be a different Congress, which will hold hearings.
Right.
You know?
And there will actually
they won't just hold hearings. They will pass laws.
Mm-hmm.
They will pass laws. I mean, if I were, and there's nothing you can do if you're Exxon, right? But if I were Exxon, I would be prepared to see an end to subsidies for oil. I would be prepared to see an end to, I would be prepared to see a reinvigoration of alternative energy, you know, and somebody to say to the oil companies, and by the way, you are liable for the damage you've done to the planet.
Right.
Let's just say, okay, you know what? You want to declare war on us, that we have tools. We are not helpless.
Yes. And I would say some aggressive enforcement of antitrust legislation is in order, because one of the reasons why it's been so easy for corporate media to cave to Trump is that there aren't that many companies out there that own everything. And a lot of times, like CBS News is not what makes Paramount its money. That's a loss leader. So their incentive is to give Trump what he wants with the news so that they can have their big merger or their hostile takeover of Netflix. That's their main interest. And perhaps we shouldn't have, so few companies have their hands in so many different things. Maybe it's time to really rethink a lot of the media mergers that have taken place over the last several decades.
Yeah, it's not just the media. I mean, 3 companies own all the cereal boxes, no matter how many brands you see in the store. It's $9 for a box of grape nuts because the same company own all the stores, all the cereal brands. We are. If capitalism is going to be saved, it's not going to be saved by the monopolists. They want to, that's not the system that delivers abundance at a price that people can afford. Monopolies isn't the system that does that. Monopolies are rent-seeking behavior that makes the owners as much money as possible. But a functioning capitalist economy requires a lot of competition, where people do their best to innovate, to give you and me things we want that we can afford, not things we have to have that we can't really pay for.
Right.
And that's a difference. And I hope we get there.
And we should also note how many of our corporate titans appear in the Epstein files. Elon Musk, Bill Gates, on and on. And, once again, it's all part of this mentality that when you're part of the Epstein class, rules don't apply to you. And that is the antithesis of what this country is supposed to be, a pluralistic democracy where you have freedom of choices and where we're not just being ruled by oligarchs. So I think that definitely there needs to be accountability on a whole lot of fronts, and not starting with when Trump is out of office, starting with the new Congress.
And all of us can move today. Go to the companies, to call these companies and say to them, I'm not buying your stuff while these people are on your board. We have power, and we've shown it this last year. We learned how to use it this last year. That's why I think that these fascists have hit their high watermark, Susan. Not that they won't be enormously dangerous and cause more trouble, but in this first year, while they were consolidating power in the government, we were learning how to fight back in the rest of the country.
Yes.
And the lessons we've learned will overwhelm them at some point, and that point is coming.
Yes. And, if you look at any poll out there, it's very clear which side is winning right now. And Trump's popularity has fallen faster than anyone predicted. And so, now is the time for us to turn up the heat. There's a No Kings protest that's set for next month. It might still be very cold where you and I are, Edwin, in the Midwest, but
we'll be out
anyway. We're built for this. I mean, look at what the people of Minneapolis did in like -10, -20 degree weather. That's not going to stop us.
Yeah, well, and you know what, Susan, it was 60 degrees here yesterday. I mean, the weather does some very strange things now.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So before we go, Edwin, I have a very difficult question for you, and that is, if you had to pick one member of Trump's cabinet, who would you say is the worst of the worst?
With a slight amendment, if I could only get rid of one, I think they're all terrible. But if I could only get rid of one, it would be Pam Bondi, because the weaponization of justice is protecting all the rest of them. So she would be the one who I think should be the first to go. We cannot. We need to restore the integrity of the justice system, and that will deal with them all. But worst of the worst, I don't know. Whoever's in the news today. I mean, Kennedy is causing vast damage in the country.
Yeah.
Doug Burgum, whatever his name is, decided to pull those signs down to reinvent history, pretend that history doesn't exist. Bondi, we've talked about. Howard Lutnick is appalling from start to finish. Enriching his kids by using tariffs to enrich his family, and Jared isn't in the administration in a role, but I hope someday to get a very good look at this illegal, unregistered lobbyist stuff. And I hope that, Trump's pardon list before he leaves office is going to be very long, very long. And I don't think it's going to protect all of them, but.
Because there can be state level charges against many of these people. Yeah.
Yeah. And vile crowd. So I'm sorry, that's not a real answer to your question, but the one who is most in the way of dealing with any of it is Pam Bondi.
I think you make an excellent case, and of course, the sobering thought is,
do you have a lead villain?
What?
Do you have a lead villain among this crowd?
I would go with RFK Jr. myself, just because I feel like he stays out of the headlines more, except, when he kills a bear or talks about snorting coke off toilets, then he can't be ignored. But what he is doing behind the scenes is so far reaching to our medical research. I mean, we have Moderna that is now
not do research anymore.
Right. They won't do research. And these are vaccines that could have resulted in millions of people, millions of lives saved. And now that research is lost. And for how long?
Yep.
what
I don't want to leave Tulsi Gabbard off the list either.
yeah,
Compromising our national security.
she is awful. But what has been done to our medical system, and the damage in terms of research for cures for diseases, and what is going on now where, children are getting sick, both in detention centers or just in the state of South Carolina, for instance, because of his long-running campaign against vaccines. I feel like that is the kind of damage that is going to be very hard to undo in a short period of time. We can have a new attorney general who can start prosecuting the absolute fuck out of these monsters, and we need that. But how many years is it going to take to catch up on research? That's a real fear of mine. And the fact that this would take place years after we had the worst pandemic in decades, in a century, and this is the way we go, putting an absolute insane quack who is purely malevolence, in charge of our healthcare system. That is a really hard pill to swallow, because I covered COVID day in and day out here in Michigan. My job was to report how many people were dying every day, and that we would put someone in charge who has decided to profit from all of this is really sobering to me. But there's a case that can honestly be made for just about anyone in that administration.
They're all terrible, hideous. Yeah. But you make a good one about RFK.
Well, there will certainly be many more things that this administration will do next week for us to talk about. That's the way it always works. But, I think at least, let's bring it back to what we were talking about at the top of the show. There are people like Jesse Jackson out there who are inspiring to us, who understood the power of organizing. I feel like the spirit of his life, lived on, and of so many other people in what the people of Minneapolis and the people of Chicago did to rise up against ICE. And I would expect that when we all gather for the next No Kings protest next month, that Jesse Jackson will be at the forefront of our minds, and he should be.
One of the reasons we are going to overcome this oppressive administration is because he was right. Each of us is somebody, and we believe that. We believe it, and we're going to keep our dignity, and we can't with this guy there. Put a slap in his name on all of us.
Yep. And that is a message that is really the opposite of what you hear out of the Trump administration every day, which is, we'll tell you who matters. There are people who matter and people who don't, and those who don't should be locked away forever. And that's not America.
Nope. No. Nope. And we won't let it ever be. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Edwin. And for everyone at home, please tune in at 1 p.m. Eastern on Friday for Edwin's show. It's The Democracy Stupid. And thanks
this week with Jen Bendery. It'll be great.
Oh, she is a great reporter for HuffPost, has been there covering Congress. She was on the ground in Minneapolis, so it will be a great conversation. Yeah. So tune in for that one.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.